Welcome to the Dawn Jarvis Show with Dawn Jarvis, the diverse nurse. And in this podcast, we will be talking about healthcare, self-care, diversity, careers, and well-being from a Black woman's perspective. We're really happy that you're here. So if you're ready, let's get on with the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Dawn Jarvis Show. This is the podcast where I talk to busy leaders, professionals, and business owners who are part of my diverse nurse network. We talk about what they do, who they are, and why they do what they do, and how they prioritise their own health and well-being and stay focused, positive, and productive. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by the lovely Jannice Jones, who I've been on the same stage with on Clubhouse several times. And we met and connected properly at a recent 3-day event that we both went to with a mutual friend. And I'm delighted that she's come on the show. Jannice is a well-being entrepreneur, a consultant to business owners and on well-being, and a coach. Jannice is also an author and has written the book When Love is a Drug, A Guide to Surviving Love Addiction. We're going to be talking about how to set boundaries around your time, energy, and vision to increase your vitality and improve your well-being, and discussing why boundary setting is necessary, how to set healthy boundaries, how to keep healthy boundaries, and why you'd want to. So, Janice, fantastic title, by the way. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm absolutely brilliant, and it's a real pleasure to be here with you, Dawn. As
Oh,
you say, we've connected on another, medium, and always loved what you said. So I was really honoured when you asked me to come onto your podcast. So thanks.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And I'm looking forward to chatting to you and finding out all about you. It's been really good in the process of doing the podcast to find out a little bit more about you and some of the similarities between us. So I want you to sort of like tell us all about you, what you do, why you do it, and how you got to where you are today on this podcast.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I've just finished a master's in positive psychology. And the reason why I wanted to do positive psychology is because I heard a chap speaking on YouTube, and he was talking about going from learned helplessness to learned optimism. And many
Mm.
people, when we grow up with trauma or with some sort of something going on in our families of origin that takes us, away from being happy, if you like, we often go to that place of learned helplessness. And so I love the idea of learning about something that could really help me to help others to be able to become learned optimists, to be able to have clear boundaries, to be able to live a more positive, productive, healthy, well-being life. And that's what I did. So I did my master's, I've completed it. But prior to that, I've been in recovery for multiple addictions for over 24 years. So I have coached other women for literally over 20 years within the health well-being arena, but in to do with addictions. And what I'm doing now moving forwards, and I'm also, as you said, an author, and what I'm doing now moving forwards is combining all those things to help
Mhm.
individuals and businesses to either look after themselves really in the best way and to look after their staff if it's a business. And a lot of businesses are saying at this present time that
Mhm.
their staff are almost on burnout. The
Yeah.
staff, especially those that had to work through the pandemic. And so my goal is to go into these places and bring some light, bring some hope and some optimism and some real practical things that they can do in order to alleviate some of that stress, and some of it is around setting healthy boundaries. So that's why I'm here, and that's what I do, and I'm really really excited actually about moving forwards and working with the businesses and the individuals, because none of us, if we're not at our full wellness well-being quotient, if we're not if we don't have a high WQ, then we are not going to be able to go out and make the impact in the world that we want to.
I love that. I really, really like that. That is amazing. So first of all, I just want to ask you about positive. There's so much to say there, isn't there? I want to talk about positive psychology. So what's positive psychology as opposed to not positive psychology?
Normal psychology. Well, for many, many years, when psychology first came about, it was very much, around Freud and people like that. And it was always looking at how do we take people from psychopathology, so anxiety, depression, all sorts of mental health issues, up to a place where they are, 0 to -7 to 0. And what positive psychology does is it says we want to study, it's the science of well-being and excellence. So
Lovely.
how do we take people from -7 to +7, or from -2 to +7, or from 0 to +7? Because with all the studies that have been done, many people, there's very few people who are really flourishing, because it's the science of flourishing and what's the optimal way, what has to be there in order for people to flourish, whether that's individually or within the workplace. And when they've done studies, only 17%, if that, of people are actually flourishing around the world. The rest, majority, are languishing. So that area of, yeah, it's okay, I'm not particularly healthy, or I'm not particularly fired up, or I'm not particularly creative, or, it's just all okay. That's languishing. They're not depressed, or, not wanting to go on, or there's nothing major going on, but they're not fired up and involved or engaged with their life. And that's the case for so many people working in businesses today. They are not engaged, they're not fired up, they're not feeling creative, they're not feeling necessarily heard or seen or supported or valued. And so it's how do we go in there and turn that around so that they as individuals can start to flourish. Yes, the business will flourish as a result. You'll get less presenteeism, absenteeism, staff turnover. People will go the extra mile for the business when they are flourishing. You'll get all of that. But more important to me is that all those individuals get to improve their lives.
That's
And
fantastic.
that's what businesses are. They are made up of real people with real lives. They are not just workers. They are people that quite often at the moment are struggling, and they need some real practical, tactical things that they can implement to start to build resilience and hope, and to become, happy and engaged and flourishing in their lives. And that's what I do.
That's absolutely wonderful, and I love that. And I love that sort of like call back to before we actually started recording, we were chatting around, how people are coping. And I, as a nurse working in the health service when the pandemic started, I've seen like real time how people cope with emergencies. And I know that in the sort of like healthcare professionals, we're sort of almost trained to cope with emergencies and that, but this has been an ongoing emergency. It's not ended. The impact of it is still happening, and still working through that. And I know from adrenaline, and you'll know this, Jannice, that you can keep that going for so long, can't you? But then you burn out and you struggle. And I know the culture around the health, the caring professions is to carry on because this is an emergency, and who else is going to do it? And there's a bit of a hero thing about that, which we could talk about another time. But that they just carry on. But I really like what you said about practical tactics that people can use to manage and to flourish. And the evidence does show that if a workforce or individuals are well, and they are, they're at their full capacity. And I like what you said about well-being quotient. I love that. That benefits the business, that benefits the individual, and that also benefits society in general, and children and everybody, doesn't it? Really, crime, the whole thing. So yeah, I really, really love that. You've talked a little bit already that you style yourself as a well-being entrepreneur, and we talked before, didn't we, sort of about us as business owners, we're very clear about what we do and why we do it. And I just wanted you to explain, what is a well-being entrepreneur? What does that look like in reality?
Can we just stop there a second while this thing goes past me? Can you hear it? Because it's really loud. Yeah, thanks for that question. I am a wellness entrepreneur, or a well-being entrepreneur. You can use either. And what that is I go into organizations and I see how the staff are, what's going on there, what's the culture, because it all comes back to the culture of the organization. And we were talking about, I've worked in the NHS, I understand what that culture, we are brilliant at helping the people that come through the door, but the actual culture sometimes within the organization is not very helpful towards the people that actually work there.
So true.
Especially in some of the helping professions. And I don't just go into places like the NHS but other businesses. So it's about going in and finding out, how are the staff really, how they really are, what are they struggling with? Is it because they're not feeling supported? Is it that their own health and well-being, we all did it for even just for a little while in lockdown, started watching too much Netflix,
Yeah.
started eating too many of the odd
Trust
snacks,
me. Trust me.
stop running or do it because we couldn't get to gym, stop doing that.
Yes.
And so started and went to bed later, got up later, all of that. So it's finding out, because well-being starts with really simple things and then you build on it from there. So the basis of well-being is what we eat, what we drink, getting enough sleep, moving our bodies on a daily basis, not sitting glued to a screen hour after hour after hour. And even if you're in an organization where, your job is in front of a computer, you can still set a little timer. Every 50 minutes, you have to get up from your desk.
Yeah,
And
very important.
go and have a walk, go outside for 2 minutes, whatever it is, and then come back, and you will be so much more productive by practicing simple self-care, drinking enough water throughout the day. These are really simple things, but once you get those in place, then you can build the other things that go into making well-being. And one of them, as you say, we were talking about, is boundaries.
Yes.
Why are boundaries important?
Oh, yeah. And we're on to our topic about boundaries and how that can help us with our vitality and our well-being. So why is boundary setting necessary? I think I know, but I really want to hear your perspective on this, Jannice, because we talk about boundaries a lot and sort of being boundaried, and professionally, I've spoken to a few professionals on the podcast, and it's sort of almost your professional self and your personal self, and especially when you're a coach and you're helping people, I know it's important to be boundaried for professional reasons, for all sorts of reasons, and also to maintain your sense of self. But why do you think boundary setting is necessary for your normal Joanna normal?
Yeah, and for me, boundaries is around, it's not just around time, because most people think, oh, boundaries is around time. It's also about energy. We have to be really boundaried about our energy. Where are we getting leakages from? And for me, boundaries are, and it's always healthy, loving boundaries. So it's not, here's a wall, you don't get over it. It's not that type of boundary, because then the flow of everything stops. But it is about, what do I need to do? What do I need to protect my time, my energy, my space, my ability to be able to sit and think? How much more productive, how many more ideas would we have as entrepreneurs, as business owners, if we actually gave ourselves 10 minutes, 20 minutes a day where we don't do anything? We just sit and think, or imagine, or rest, or every single person knows what it feels like when you go on holiday. First few days, you're exhausted. You just want to lay there. By day 3, new ideas start popping into your head. By day 5, you're chomping at the bit to go, oh, I've got this, I can start doing this. And then you come back and it all gets lost again because you go straight back into doing mode. So boundaries are so important for all of those reasons. And especially, I come from a long line, a history of helping professions, nurses and midwives and people like that. I was mental health. And, we love helping other people. We love giving. Those are the things. But along with that, if we are not boundaried, we absolutely go to burnout. And it doesn't serve anyone. It serves absolutely nobody. It doesn't serve us, doesn't serve our families, and it certainly doesn't serve the people that we're working with or the rest of the planet. If we go to burnout, then we cannot then do anything, because all of it stops. When we go to burnout, I burnt out years ago when I was in Corporatesville. I burnt out, and it was the most frightening, shocking, literally the simplest of things seem like having to climb Mount Everest. So I know what that feels like, that thing of feeling like you're underwater and you can't get your breath and you're just feeling like you're about to stay under and not come back up. And so if I can help even one individual to not have to go to that place because they understand what they need to do to look after their well-being and their wellness and their mental health and their physical health, their emotional health, their spiritual health, all of these things. But in order to do that, they need to be able to set boundaries. And for some people, they can set a boundary, but they can't keep it. They set it and then backtrack. So as soon as somebody pushes against it, all right then. But actually, keeping the boundary is just as important, if not more so, than setting it, because we need to do that. We need to protect. And I heard this lovely thing the other day, and I think it's just so perfect, that we're used to filling people from our own cup.
Yes.
And we need to stop doing that. We need to fill people up from the excess from our cup, not from our cup. Our
so
cup,
true.
what is in our cup needs to keep being filled up, and only when it's absolutely full should we then be filling other people's cup from all the excess that is flowing out. And if I've got holes in that cup because I've got no boundaries, I can't say no, I'm always saying yes, even to things that I absolutely know that I should be saying no to.
I hear you.
Then I've got big holes in that cup, and I need to plug the holes before I start filling the cup, and then feed people from the outpouring that comes out of the cup.
I love that analogy. That's fantastic. That's really good. And it's all about, and if you see, I'm a very visual person, and the cup analogy is brilliant. You can't, and I had to throw a beloved mug away the other day because it had a crack in it and it was leaking. So it was no use to nobody. So, and that's just perfect, isn't it? I love the cup and I love myself, but you can't, it had no use. And I think that's why you have to set boundaries, isn't it? So you don't want to be of no use to do what you need to do, to help people, because that's what we want to do. But you can't if your cup is not full, can you, really? Because you'll be constantly thinking, oh, my cup's leaking. So that is not a good thing. So how do people set boundaries? Because we've talked about why, and so now we're going on to the how. How do people set boundaries? Because I think, and I don't think I'm alone in this, it's sort of like it's like dieting, isn't it? It's sort of like, what you got to do, and exercising, what you got to do, the science. I'm a clever person, I'm not silly, do you know what I mean? But how do you do it? And and you're a person who can support people to do that as well, aren't you, Jannice? So
I absolutely do. That is one of the things that I do. Well, first of all, you have to be able to recognize that a boundary needs to be set.
Mm-hmm.
And so how to recognize that is to ask yourself, am I always saying yes to people without even pausing to think as to whether or not I can or should or could actually do what I'm
Mm-hmm.
about to say yes to? People who are very poor boundary setting, who don't have that idea of their time is really important, that everybody else, what they need is far more important. They don't pause for 1 second. So I always get people to go, let's look at the last week. How many times did somebody request something of you and you didn't even take a nanosecond to pause
Very uncomfortable, Jannice.
before you gave your reply? So one, we identify if that's something that they do. They just say yes without even considering. The second thing we do is go, okay, so here is the strategy moving forward. The 3 Ps: pause, ponder, proceed. So the
Oh, I
pause
love that.
is always say, I'll have to think about that. Can I get back to you? Simple sentence, really simple, but people don't ever say it. They just go, yes, yes, I could do that. Yes. And in fact, I won't just do that. I'll do this as well. It's like, hold on, just 1 nanosecond and go. Pause. Can I get back to you about that? And it's literally take that breath in and just go, can I get back to you about that?
Mm-hmm.
Then you can go away and think about, you might get back to them in an hour, a day, or a week. Doesn't matter. Whatever time frame works for you. And you think about, you do that ponder part.
Mm-hmm.
Is this something that I can do, want to do, should do? Because we get asked things all the time. Can you come and do this? And would you do that? And can you be involved in this? And but actually, sometimes we can't do it because we haven't got the time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
We're completely booked out for the next month or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe I could do it in 2 months, but right now the answer is no. Maybe it's that it's not in alignment with my values. It's not something that I want to be involved in. Or maybe it's a personality thing. Maybe I don't work well with this person. And that's another good reason to say no. Or maybe you just want some time for yourself, which is great as well. And you think, actually, yes, I could fill my day up with but how about I say no to some of those things so that I can have time for practicing self-care, self-love, self-compassion to improve my own well-being. So the 3 Ps, and then only proceed once you have paused and pondered about, is that the right thing for me to do? And really ask yourself that question before you give the reply. And if it is, then look at timescales that work for you. And if it isn't, and this is the part that people struggle with the most, which is how to go back to that person and say, which is why you need time to think about it, because in the moment, most people will just say yes. You have to stop doing that. You have to stop doing that behavior, because it doesn't serve you or the other person. Because if you are saying yes to things that actually are not in alignment, or that, you don't get on with that person, they're not energetically right for you, or, you haven't got the time, then you're going to turn up hurried or, not in the right energy or space anyway.
I really love
So
that, Jannice.
then going back to the person, whether that's by phone, email, or in person, you just have to take that deep breath again and go, actually, I'm really sorry, but that's not going to work for me. You don't even, sometimes you can give a reason, but actually you don't have to give a reason. Unless you want to give a reason, you can just say, I'm awfully sorry, but that's not going to work for me. at this moment in time, or that's not in alignment with where I'm going, or you don't, obviously you're not going to say to the person, actually I don't like you, so I'm not
We
gonna
don't share the
come
same
and work.
values.
You're not
Janice, no,
going to say
sorry.
that.
Yeah.
But you are going to say, actually, it's not where I'm headed, so I'm going to have to pass at this time. So we don't have to hurt a person's feelings, but how that is received, and this is where people fall down and why they often then change their mind, is that if that person is emotionally mature and intelligent, that person will say, thank you very much for coming back to me and for considering, and I wish you well. So if they are emotionally intelligent and emotionally mature, that's how they will respond. If they're not, they will come back to you with, yeah, but how about, and will you just, and so that's where you need to keep the firm boundary and just reiterate and say, look, as I said, I can't do that right now. It's not going to work for me. I'm really flattered that you asked me, but I'm going to have to decline. And then shut up.
I like that because it's like, because it's, yeah, it's sort of it's very, as you said in your intro, it's a practical guide that you can practice actually, and it's almost because we both know about selling yourself and your services, and it's sort of like, you almost have to anticipate the objections, don't you, really, but to restate. And I also really like that the fact that the ponder bit, you have to think about what commitments you've got, what you need to do, and part of those commitments are to your own health and well-being, because they're just as important as the other things that you're doing for other people.
Absolutely core. And men do it as well, but it's especially women. We are very, very poor, not all and not all the time, but quite often, and especially in the health professions, very poor at saying no to people or putting our own needs and our own well-being first. But we have to get better at it. We just have to get better at it because it's necessary. Because as I said before, we're no use to anyone if we're burnt out, if we're on the floor, completely wiped out, unable to do anything, then we can't do anything. We can't help anybody. And so, bring it back to well-being all the time. Our well-being is really important, and that's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. All of them are really important.
Brilliant. And you talked about it a little bit, sort of like you talked about sort of when you get the response, how do you sort of like keep to the boundaries, but on an ongoing basis, how do you keep to those boundaries that you set? And with some people I know who are very boundaried, it's almost like because you've stated what your boundaries are, people have a respect for you and know not to go there really, or know that if they ask, that the answer might be no. And it's sort of like a positive circle. So you hear about sort of like the negative circles, don't you? Reinforcing circles, but it's because if people know that you're quite boundaried, that you've thought about it, you've considered it, and you've decided at this time that that's not for you, and in whether you've said why or not that you have to, but people know that about you. But if people don't know that about you, is it repeating the cycle of sort of like I thought about it, it's not for me at this time, thank you so much for considering me? Is that how you do it on an ongoing basis, Janice?
Absolutely. And you brought up a really good point there, because you see, the thing about, because it's traits of codependency, that inability to say no is one of the traits of codependency. And one of the things that drives other people mad around codependence is the fact that our yeses don't mean yes and our no's don't mean no. So with that means that we will often say yes to things and then get really resentful about doing them. So we won't be doing them with an open heart, and we don't really want to be there. We don't really want to be doing it at all, but we'll do it, but we won't do it in the right way. And people also, when we're saying yes or no, people energetically, people pick up on that.
Yeah,
If
leaks.
we're saying yes, but they picking up that we're saying no, or
Yeah.
vice versa. And so people then feel uncomfortable
Mhm.
around people whose yes don't mean yes and no's don't mean no. And so therefore, and also, unfortunately, we're far more likely to attract to us narcissistic type personalities, or
Mhm.
very controlling personalities,
Mm,
or
mm,
because it's a real Achilles heel for us,
mhm,
and I'm talking here from a recovered codependent personality. Yeah,
mhm,
so I
mhm.
understand this trait inside out. um, and as my boundaries have got better, my relationships have all improved. Some have
Mhm.
fallen away, which is great because they were
Yeah.
not
They
healthy.
work the
But the ones
yeah.
that are there and that have actually, whether that's with my own children or people I work with or
Mhm,
whatever,
mhm.
because my yeses really do mean yes. And when I say yes, I've thought about it, it's wholehearted, and I'm fully committed and I'm present. And when I say no, I mean no, and that's fine. They don't have to ask again. It's like, oh, cool, that's fine. I'll go and ask somebody else. And it's never an issue, but we make it an issue. We think, oh, they're not going to like me if I say
Mm.
no, if I let
Yes.
them down. Or, as you said, the savior complex. It
Yes.
has to be me. I have to save them. No,
Yes.
no, and no.
I know. I know.
What's meant for us won't pass us by. But
Yeah.
we have to get really clear on our boundaries, on what is meant for us.
Yeah.
Everything isn't meant for us. So if we're saying yes to everything, then we're not being true to ourselves. And so for me, underneath all of that is that stuff around, who am I? What do I stand for? What are my values? And what am I here to actually do? And if I'm being pulled over here and over here and over here, then I've got no energy and time left to go here to do what I'm actually really meant to be doing.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. And I love that. That's a real good guide. And also, it's sort of like there's a not a downside, but there's almost I like to say there's a price, isn't there, that you have to pay, and that might be uncomfortable, but it's worth it. Like, and it's sort of like an old Jamaican saying, nothing good, you have to work it, you have to work at it, because if it's worth it, it means it had to be hard got. And some of the price around that. And I know that in my sort of journey as a sort of business owner, moving from the health care profession, it is all around these negotiations about who am I, what am I here to do, what would I like to do, what don't I want to do, what do I like, what don't I like, what people do I want to be around me, and also the renegotiating of friendships that you've had, relationships that you've had, and were they good for me, what was that all about, how did I feel about it, but also, and this is the thing I'd like to talk a little bit about, that about how you feel when you've been assertive, when you've been boundaried, and it's not, you're not going, yay, I've been assertive, it's great. You're sort of like, oh, that wasn't good, and our relationship has changed forever, and it could be a very close relationship, as you said, a family member or a very close friend or even a partner, and everything changes, and that's difficult to sort of manage, isn't it, Jannice? So sort of, I just
Yeah.
wonder what you thought about that.
No, absolutely. And you have to, there is a period that you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because it's a
Yeah.
new behavior. And it's like, you mentioned the diet, it's like any behavior that we start doing
Mm-hmm.
at the start. And the latest theories about this is it's somewhere between 61 and 91 days. So,
Mm.
it used to be thought of as 21 days to
It did, and that's
form new
changed.
habits.
Oh
Yes, it's now
no.
61, between 61 and 91 days is the
Oh wow.
optimal time to let,
Mhm.
because if we go back to the brain, and we've got these neural pathways. So if we keep doing what we've always done, we're always going to keep getting what we've always got. So
Mm, mhm, mhm,
in order to lay down a new neural pathway, we have to do something enough times for that to be the new train track that our train
mhm,
goes down.
mm,
And so that is going to feel uncomfortable. When we first do it, yeah, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but it will pass really quickly, and it will pass an awful lot quicker than saying yes to something that might take you an hour a day. You might be saying yes to something that for somebody else that's going to take a year or something. You
Mm,
know, how
mm,
long is that going to go on compared
mhm,
to literally a few seconds or minutes of uncomfortableness? And if we really understand that if we do not value ourselves and our time, I
mhm,
mean, really value who we are and what we're here to do on the planet, then other people won't value our time either.
mm,
And we show people that we value that by setting boundaries,
mhm,
healthy boundaries. And that's why I said at the beginning, you can do it in a loving way. And you can go back to the person in a loving way and still be thankful for being asked,
mhm.
but you're still saying no because it's not right for you. And then you have to let go. That's why I said if the other person that you're saying it to has emotional maturity and intelligence, they'll be if they're used to setting healthy boundaries themselves, they will not even give it a second thought. It won't be in the slightest bit of an issue.
Yeah,
If it's an issue, it's not your issue, it's the other person's issue. And that's none of your business. So you let go as long as you've been intentional, clear, and
mhm,
coming from a loving place.
yeah,
You can actually let go of how the other person deals with that, because that's their stuff. And that's the stuff around boundaries, is it frees up all that energy that you
mhm,
could spend either doing something that you shouldn't have said yes to in the first place because you
mm,
couldn't say no. And it
mhm.
also, when you do say no, it frees you up to go, okay, that's done. On to the next thing. Whereas you could spend days, hours, weeks thinking, oh, that person's not going to
I
like me. You
know,
know,
I
let it
know.
go. Just let it go. What other people think of us is none of our business. As
I love.
long as we know that we have come from our place of
Oh,
hope
true.
and truth
Yeah,
and values,
yeah.
that's not our stuff. And so all it does is it shows you their response, shows you where they are.
Yes.
If they're
Yes, very
emotionally
true.
secure, they won't have a
Yeah.
problem with it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And yeah, it's very true. And I love what you say about what the people think about you is none of your business. I would say, Janice, and I think this is something you probably help people with too, is that is something that people struggle with. And I think it's like, I know you can tell me whether this is right. I think it's linked to codependency, isn't it? That, that you worry about that you stew about that. And in these sort of like quite dysfunctional relationships, that sort of, what are they thinking? Do you know what I mean? And I can't bear the thought they think this of me and stuff like that. But I think that's something that you have to sort of like work on as yourself around those boundaries. And I think the payoff is to sort of like have a more calm, knowing that you are being true to your values, and and that's the way, and that's the way it is. And I think, and I do say this to people, other people's things, I'm not going to use the word I usually use, which is a bit of a swear word, it's their stuff, isn't it? That's, it's their stuff, and it's not your stuff. It's not your stuff to clean up and to deal with. And I think, so I should do a sort of like thesis one day about why nurses go into nursing, because I think it's fascinating, why caregivers do what they do and almost get off on it. So but that I think, as you mature and you sort of like see it for what it is, and all you can do, and for people that might be feeling, oh, that's me and I feel really bad about it, you've got to give yourself grace, man. We are where we are, and we're shaped by our experiences, aren't we? And the thing to do is to do better going forward and to practice, and it's not always going to be the right thing to do. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's brilliant, Jen. So tell me a bit about your book. You've written a book, a guide to when love is a drug, a guide to surviving love addiction. Love the title. So
Yes.
how did you come to write it? You spoke about sort of being recovering from several things over many years, and that you use your experience to sort of help others from that place. So tell me a bit about the book.
Okay, so the book really, it doesn't just tell my story, it tells the story of two other women as well. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the story of three women who have all come through various addictions, one of them being love addiction, and how
Mm-hmm.
that shows up. But that's like one part of the book, and the other part of the book is then what are the things we can recognize, what are the things we can change, and how do we change those? I ought to
Mm-hmm.
turn it into a course, really, but anyway,
Yeah,
that's
you should.
you know
That's for
that's
another time, Janice. We'll come back to that. Yeah.
absolutely. And why I wrote it, and I tried for 3 years to write it. Okay, and I knew I always had to write this book, but I had to be ready. And what
Mm-hmm.
it took for me to be ready to write it, as I say, I'd tried for about 3 years. I'd got maybe a couple of paragraphs, and that was it. And then my second marriage was to a narcissist, and I
Mm-hmm.
moved to Spain with him. And I had a couple of instances before we moved to Spain where I thought, and remember, at this time, I'm still a codependent
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still a love addict.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved to Spain with him, and I had some instances where I thought, oh, I don't think I should do this. I don't think I
Mm-hmm.
should sell my house and move to
Mm-hmm.
a foreign country in the middle of
Mm-hmm.
nowhere with this guy. Yeah, I don't even think
Mm-hmm.
I should marry him. But I did. I didn't listen to that. Now I
Mm-hmm.
never, ever don't listen to my gut because
Mm-hmm.
it's always right. So anyway, I go over there. I move to Spain, so I leave my grown-up children behind, all my recovery friends, because by this time I'd been in recovery for alcoholism and drug addiction for over
Oh
15
wow.
years. Yeah.
Wow.
And I leave all of my recovery buddies, and we go and live up a mountain in the middle of nowhere with no neighbors.
Oh
And
bless
this
you.
person completely changed. Eventually, I walked away from him. I think I
Mm-hmm.
lasted about less than a year with him in that country because
Mm-hmm.
it was all
Mm-hmm.
ramped up. All the gaslighting, everything was
Oh my
really, really
goodness.
ramped up. It was horrific.
Yes.
So when I got away from him, divorced him, I moved back to the similar area, and with the sole intention, I'm now going to finish my book. I'm now
Mm-hmm.
going to completely wrap, and I did. And
Mm-hmm.
literally within, I think, 3 months of going back there, I had finished the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And within I think about 9 months, I published it, and it was out there in the world. And the reason, even though I didn't go into the stuff around narcissism in that
Mm-hmm.
book, because
Mm-hmm.
I was still very unaware of a lot of the stuff
Mm-hmm.
around narcissism. I absolutely went into, why for some people, love addiction is a real thing. It's not just, oh, I'm waiting for my prince to come.
Oh bless you.
It's
Yeah.
so much more than that. It's
Mm-hmm.
that giving away our power. It's
Mm-hmm.
that at the core of it is actually fear of emotional intimacy. It's real fear. And that a lot of that came from a childhood with abuse and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I was able to get this book done, and it goes into a little bit around codependency and stuff around that. So the whole reason for writing it was simply just, if I can positively impact one other woman, and
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't quite have to go to the same place that I went to. Because remember, this was in recovery. I hadn't had a drink. I hadn't had a drug for 20 years. I hadn't had a drink for 15 years. So,
Mm-hmm.
I was really fully in recovery. But at my Achilles heel was my codependency, my love addiction, and underneath that, the adult child issues, the stuff that was
Mm-hmm.
sat there from childhood. And so, that book moved me on that journey.
Yes, that's such a brilliant story, and brilliant's the wrong word. It's such a moving, sort of transformational story, and sort of like when you started talking, I was thinking, oh, red flag, red flag. This not good. This not good. And sort of like, no, 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 no. And then and sort of like you felt it yourself. And I think that I would say I've got love addiction, but that's a whole different story, And I've said to you before, you probably know my story without even knowing my story, but it's those sort of like I really like what you said about trusting your gut. I heard on a YouTube YouTube segment a psychologist said, no other animal doesn't trust their gut. Nobody would walk past a crocodile and think, oh, do you know what? That crocodile's all right. He's not going to eat me. No other animal would do that, because, but we sort of think we ignore the signs, don't we? And we think, oh, no, it's going to be all right. They're all right. And I sort of really sort of that you sort of knew you went there. What I love is because you were recovering, you lasted a year. So I think, even, you make mistakes again and again. Sometimes it takes a long time to I know with sort of domestic violence and stuff, it takes about 7 times, or even 20 times before somebody does anything about it. The good thing is, I think, and why you can give yourself grace is the times, the duration between the times gets shorter, don't they, before you do anything, when you've got some knowledge around that. And so you know that you're on a journey to recovery, don't you, really? So I love that
But also understanding the model for the process of change. There's a great model, I think it's called TTM, and Prashanka is the author, and he talks about the pre-contemplation and contemplation stage, and actually how important they are. So in the pre-contemplation stage, you're not even aware really that something needs to change. Then you go into the contemplation stage and you are aware of it, and then only then do you make a decision and go into action, and then you have to do something to reinforce that action, so don't go back into that awful relationship, and I think sometimes people, especially families of loved ones who can see that the person is in a damaging relationship, will try and move them straight into action
and get frustrated with them.
They end up going back, and then something awful might happen, or they might have to do that a few times, because there is a real stages of change. And if you try and rush people too quickly when they're not ready to make that decision for themselves, then it will backfire. And at the same time, going into recovery, because there are fellowships that deal specifically with codependency, CODA, love addiction is SLAA, adult children of alcoholics is ACOA, and all of these fellowships really help with these things. And actually a person can go to their very first meeting and something can change like that, because that's what it was like for me, with alcoholism. So I never drank again, that was it. And I think sometimes that is around the model of hope, which is when we sit in a room with people who have absolutely lived what we are currently living through, and they are on the other side of it, they model hope to us, and suddenly we go, it is possible. And up until that point, it wasn't possible, because we didn't know that it was possible. And then suddenly when we know that it's possible, I've gone all goosebumpy, because that's what happens, then we can suddenly do something, because we've got that hope and we understand that it is possible. And setting boundaries is like that. It can be really, really difficult. It's like, well, I don't know anyone who does that, because probably everyone I know is codependent as well, or is taking advantage of the fact that you're codependent. So, when you try, now, if you're listening to this podcast, you've heard that it is possible to recover from that. It is possible to change that behavior. And then it's just either getting help with it, or practicing, or, journaling around it. And because you're now conscious of the fact that it is possible. And sometimes as change makers, as you and I both are, that's all we need to do, is get that message out that you can improve your well-being. You can learn to set boundaries. You can follow your dreams and visions, and you can become an entrepreneur. You can, but
absolutely,
until people understand that they can't.
Oh, such gems, Jannice. I was going to ask you all sorts of questions about how you stay focused, positive, productive, but you basically told us. So, that is, so thank you for that. Such gems in this, such nuggets of wisdom, and how you can help yourself. What I really like is the message of hope, and I also like so that by embodying change, by being around people who've shared your experience, that gives people hope that all things are possible, which I totally believe. I totally believe you can get there's always something that can be done, even when you're at your lowest. It's what can you do? What can you do to reclaim your power? And you talked about giving away your power and stuff like that, and I think it's really important, not just for women, but particularly for women, because that's our experience, isn't it, to reclaim your power in whatever situation, however hopeless it feels. Is what power do you have to go forward and sort of and find help to do that, and support, because it is out there. And you've mentioned some of the things, and I'll put all of those things in the show notes, because I think that's very, very useful resource. So Jannice, how can you people get in touch with you, want to work with you, want to hear more about you? I'll put the link to your book into the show notes as well. How can people do that?
So I have a website, https://www.thepositivelifecompany.com.
Yes.
I'm on Instagram, which is at The Positive Life Company. And I'm also on LinkedIn, which is at Jannice Jones, which is Jannice with a double N.
Beautifully spelt. Love it, absolutely love it. And I will put those links in the show notes, because it'd be really good to connect with Jannice, and to sort of continue on her journey. She's got such wisdom to share with us all, which I'm so grateful she's done today. We're coming towards the end of the show. It's been absolutely fascinating, and I've loved hearing everything that you shared with us. Is there one last tip? You've given us loads, but is there one last tip that you want to share with the audience and leave the audience with?
Yeah, I think it's just about valuing ourselves. It's really, really essential that we are the ones who are putting in place the framework within which that we can improve our well-being. And it's not waiting for somebody else to give us permission to do that. It's literally saying, I want to look after my health and well-being and all aspects of it. And in order to do that, that's me valuing me. And in order to do that, I have to put some boundaries in place around my time and my energy and what it is that I get involved in. And give yourself permission to do that. Value yourself, because the more of us that value ourselves, the more real positive impact we can make in the world, because then we're coming from a place of plenty, not a place of lack.
Oh, that's good. That's so good. Thank you so much, Jannice. That's amazing. And I know that, I feel like I've made a friend, and I know I've made a friend, and I know we'll work together and we'll do things together. I'm thinking of loads of things already. You definitely need to do a course about your book. Definitely. And I love your, your 3 Ps and, sort of your methodology. And I know you have a method and a system around that. So it's been really good. And I know that people will get a lot of help from you too. That's it for the Dawn Jarvis show today. It's a good one today, and which is brought to you by dawnjarvis.com and the Diverse Nurse Network. Take care, value yourself, as Jannice says, and hopefully we'll speak again soon. Goodbye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Dawn Jarvis Show. If you enjoyed this episode, there are 2 things you can do. Number 1, leave Dawn a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. It would mean so much to her if you took a moment out of your time to post your thoughts on the show. It will help Dawn reach so many more people and help them with their well-being. Number 2, subscribe to Dawn's email list, the Diverse Nurse Digest, using the link in the show notes. Until the next time, thank you and goodbye.